On this Tuesday night, the deadly consequences of Canada's record-shattering heat.
A check on your coworkers, a check on other family members.
Dozens of sudden deaths in BC, the connection to climate change, and how Canada is not adapting fast enough to the extreme heat. New evidence residents of that Florida condo were warned about its poor condition 2 months before it collapsed.
Like a bomb, looks like a bomb.
Canada's COVID-19 deaths, why there may be thousands more than have been officially recorded. And to preserve and protect, a billionaire's donation to help care for BC's coastal ecosystems.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with the record-shattering heat wave in the west. Tonight, the stifling temperatures are shifting eastward into Alberta and Saskatchewan. And in BC, where the majority of people don't have air conditioning, the toll the heat is taking is becoming clear. The cities of Vancouver, Burnaby and Surrey say at least 125 people have died suddenly since last Friday. Police believe many of the deaths are linked to the heat, and many of those who died were seniors. In Vancouver alone today, 20 sudden deaths have been reported. There are usually between 3 to 4 reports of sudden deaths per day.
We are in the midst of the hottest week British Columbians have ever experienced. And there are consequences to that, disastrous consequences for families and for communities. How we get through this extraordinary time is by hanging together, checking up on those people we know might be at risk.
And this afternoon, the village of Lytton, BC, hit a high of 49 degrees. The third day in a row, it has broken the record for the hottest place in Canada. According to Environment Canada, 59 areas in BC set new temperature records yesterday. In Vancouver, the average temperature for this day is 20 degrees. At noon Pacific today, it was 31 degrees. In Kelowna, it was 39. And in Edmonton, it was 37. Warnings connected to this heat wave stretch as far east as Manitoba. If this were a one-off heat wave, we'd be grateful when it passes and moves on. But the thing is, it's not just about single-day extremes. A new federal report says extreme heat events will become much more common if we don't act fast to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The report shows what could happen in 6 Canadian cities. In the high emission scenario, Montreal could see as many as 75 extreme heat days per year. That could be cut to 20 days per year if emissions are reduced. We'll have more on that in a moment, but we begin with the deadly effects the extreme heat is having right now. Heather Yourex-West has our top story.
In BC, the historic heat wave has already been linked to a staggering loss of life. According to RCMP, a resident at this home died Monday night.
I went into the house and I checked her at that time, and she was not breathing. She did not have a pulse and was slumped over unresponsive.
Just one of dozens of sudden deaths believed to be related to the heat. First responders across the province's lower mainland are overwhelmed.
With this heat and these extreme temperatures, we're seeing higher than ever call volumes. From what I am told, it is the busiest we have ever seen the City of Vancouver and Vancouver Fire Rescue Services.
BC remained under a heat warning Tuesday, with parts of the Okanagan reaching daytime highs in the mid-40s.
We beat the heat, get a whole bunch of fans, and just wait it out.
Starting Wednesday, campfires across BC will be banned. There are already 25 active wildfires across the province, including one north of Kamloops Lake that is now burning out of control. And it's still only June.
Here in Calgary, not only is the city under a heat advisory with temperatures rising to the high 30s, poor air quality is expected in the evenings as well, as this heat dome traps pollutants down below.
Air quality is a concern across most of BC and Alberta. Health officials urging residents to be careful when working or exercising outside.
Check on your coworkers or check on other family members. Offer them water. Double check how they're feeling, whether they need to be taking a break or not.
The heat also stretching mountain rescue resources. In Kananaskis, Alberta, search crews were called out 21 times over the weekend, responding to calls for water rescues, heat stroke, and other injuries. The heat has health, rescue, and fire officials all on edge as Western Canada's punishing weather stretches on. Heather, Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Not only are many buildings in the West not equipped with air conditioning, other infrastructure is not designed to withstand persistent extreme heat. In Metro Vancouver, it's been so hot some sidewalks have started to buckle. It's happened in downtown Vancouver and in nearby Port Coquitlam. And in Portland, Oregon, where it's usually about 24 degrees right now, the heat soared into the 40s this week, causing streetcar power cables to melt and service to be suspended. Experts say what's happening is part of a pattern, and it's just a taste of what's to come. Eric Sorensen reports.
There is nothing new about a heat dome, but what is trapping heat in Western Canada is bigger, hotter, and longer lasting than any heat occurrence before. More than a weather system, believe scientists, part of a pattern of increasingly extreme events that can be attributed to global warming.
Climate change didn't create heat domes, it just makes them worse. There's an element of it that is just different. And I think it is probably the human component.
The human component is pumping carbon into the atmosphere, holding in the heat. Northern latitudes warm faster and large land masses warm faster. Canada represents both, and we will feel it in cities where roughly 80% of Canadians live.
We are going to see more and more of these hot days in all parts of Canada.
From 1976 to 2005, most Canadian cities had just a handful of very hot days above 30 degrees Celsius. By mid-century, that will change dramatically. Calgary will go from 5 to 32 very hot days, Toronto from 11 to 55. And it's a similar story across the interior of the country. It'll be less dramatic on the coasts, but coastal regions can expect more warm days above 25 Celsius. St. John's, Newfoundland will go from 8 warm days per year to over 32 by mid-century. Vancouver from 18 to 72 warm days. Wherever you live, more warm days and more hot days are coming. As roads buckle from hot weather in places where it's never happened before, experts say we must plan our communities to withstand the heat, the floods, and other extremes that are coming.
It's very important that we rebuild our infrastructure, our societies in a way that they're adapted to the changing climate. And so we become resilient and hence less impacted by the changing climate in the decades to come.
Canada's future also includes a warming Arctic. Northern communities accustomed to freezing winters will, by 2050, see far fewer days below -30. And a winter that's not as cold will only contribute to summers that are more and more hot. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
We are adapted to deal with the cold in Canada, but not prepared to deal with the impact of long bouts of extreme heat. And a timely report from the federal government spells that out. It was released yesterday. It found large gaps remain in our preparedness for climate change. Individuals, governments, and private companies need to act fast to adapt. David Akin explains.
The call to action is clear.
The challenge is that we're not acting right now like we're in an emergency. The federal government's approach has been quite tentative.
And the federal government's own scientists say it is vital to accelerate plans to help provinces, cities, and towns deal with more frequent extreme weather events. That could involve everything from retrofitting homes in mild climates with air conditioning to building canals and dikes to deal with rising water levels in coastal communities. Such a strategy will also require some heavy lifting from provincial governments as well.
Upper levels of government are going to have to provide municipalities and individuals and businesses with the supports to invest in strengthening our infrastructure to adapt to a changing climate.
The 750-page federal government report says Canada is simply not ready for so many extreme weather events.
That work needs to take place faster than ever because this is an emergency. We're in a crisis and we need the government to act like it.
One problem flagged in the federal report, the country's roads, sewers, airports, hydro lines, and so on were designed and built by engineers who assumed that they would exist in, quote, a steady state northern climate.
We are facing a climate emergency. I mean, who would have thought words like heat dome, polar vortex would be part of our vocabulary?
Canada's environment minister says a national adaptation strategy is in the works.
We have to be thinking about how we adapt to some of the impacts of climate change that we're seeing today and that are already baked into what we're going to see over the next number of years.
The federal government and climate campaigners will argue spending on climate adaptation measures can pay for itself in the long run. Consider this. In the 14-year period from 1983 to 2007, insurance losses related to extreme weather events totaled about $400 million a year. But in the 10-year period from 2008 to 2018, insurance losses totaled $1.9 billion a year. The claims for the Fort McMurray wildfire of 2016 alone totaled $3.9 billion. And those costs will only climb in the future, the report says, without much more investment to deal with the effects of climate change. David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
The commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, Vice Admiral Craig Baines, has been given a chance to redeem himself. Baines faced heavy criticism for playing golf with former Chief of the Defence Staff General Jonathan Vance last month. Vance is under military police investigation for sexual misconduct with female subordinates. At the time, Baines called that golf game a public display of support. He later apologized for that remark. And after 2 weeks of deliberating, the acting top soldier, Lieutenant General Wayne Eyre, issued a memo to the military saying Baines admitted his error in judgment. Eyre writes, knowing his moral authority has diminished, he is determined to regain the trust and confidence of all through humility and showing us how to learn, reconcile error, and become a better leader. Calls for accountability are growing louder in Florida. There are no signs of more survivors at that collapsed condo, and parts of the crumbled building are too dangerous for rescue crews to enter. The county fire chief says 3 million pounds of concrete have already been removed from the site. Residents were warned the building needed millions of dollars in structural repairs, and new images show just how badly those repairs were needed. Jackson Proskow reports from Surfside, Florida.
6 days in, and there's no sign of a miracle. Families are stuck in purgatory, waiting for answers that still haven't come.
Nobody's giving up hope here. Nobody's stopping. The work goes on, full force.
These are real people. These are, my neighbors. And
Montreal-born trauma surgeon Dr. Howard Lieberman has been working on the pile since Thursday.
We're going 24/7. No one is stopping.
With 149 people still missing, including 4 Canadians, the most difficult moments have come when families have been brought to the site.
When you're down there and you hear the sounds, you smell the smells, and you see with your own eyes in real life what it looks like, a lot of things become a lot clearer.
Just outside the perimeter, we met Fernanda Figueiredo. On the night of the collapse, she convinced her boyfriend, Eric Demura, to stay at her house instead of returning home to his 10th floor apartment in Champlain Towers.
Probably he will arrive at home, take a shower, and die. It was a miracle.
For families of the missing and for survivors, grief and shock are tinged with anger.
How one building can go down like that? Like a bomb, looks like a bomb.
The cause is still under investigation. Photos obtained by the Miami Herald show the deteriorating concrete under the building's pool 2 days before the collapse. In April, residents were warned that structural damage had become significantly worse since a 2018 inspection and would require $15 million worth of repairs. There are at least 115 buildings in the Miami area approaching their 40-year inspection cycle.
I think the big question now is for those buildings from the 1980s that are sort of a unique typology. There was like a rush to Miami, a rush of development during that time.
Development that included the now collapsed Champlain Towers, where each day of digging through the rubble reveals only heartache. When we talk about the 3 million pounds of debris that have been removed, it's actually being hauled away in dump trucks under police escort. They move down these streets in convoys. They're headed to a warehouse where that debris can be subjected to forensic analysis in hopes of finding out what caused the collapse. Donna?
So much work to do. Jackson Proskow in Surfside, Florida. Thanks. Australia goes from COVID success story to a growing outbreak. Coming up, why millions of people are forced into lockdown. Some potential good news tonight about the Moderna vaccine. It's a very small study, and it reveals the vaccine produced antibodies against all variants tested, including the highly transmissible Delta variant. The data also shows Moderna is far more effective against the Delta variant than the Beta variant. That's the one first discovered in South Africa. The study was conducted on blood serum from just 8 people 1 week after they received the second dose. There's more evidence mixing the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for the second dose provides greater protection than 2 doses of AstraZeneca. A study from Oxford University, where the AstraZeneca vaccine was developed, found there was a much stronger immune response after mixing doses. 2 doses of Pfizer's mRNA vaccine produced the highest levels of antibodies. In Australia, more than 20 million people are now under lockdown to try to stop the spread of the Delta variant there. Perth, the capital of Western Australia, is in a 4-day lockdown. 5 million people in the Sydney region are also being told to stay at home for 2 weeks. Australia's largest city recorded at least 150 new COVID-19 cases. Brisbane and Darwin are also locking down. Australia's vaccine rollout has been slow. Less than 4% of the population is fully vaccinated. Unvaccinated travelers planning to leave Florida on a Royal Caribbean cruise will need to show proof of health insurance for COVID-19. The company made the announcement after 4 people on 2 different cruise ships tested positive this month. In Florida, the government blocks companies from demanding proof of vaccination, so the company had to use a different method to ensure passenger safety. Ahead, the pandemic's deadly toll on Canadians, why it could be far greater than we realize.
You're watching Global National.
Some troubling new insight has emerged about how Canada's death toll from COVID-19 might have been underestimated. A new study published by the Royal Society of Canada says the actual number of Canadians who died could be much higher than the official count of more than 26,000. It has been widely reported 58% of Canada's COVID-19 deaths have occurred among older adults in long-term care facilities. Now, an in-depth analysis suggests at least 2/3 of deaths that happened outside care homes may have been missed. Abigail Beeman explains.
That could have prevented him from dying, and my baby girl could have her dad.
Vincenza Vono's husband, Mauro, died of pneumonia and COVID in April. Their daughter was just 4 months old. She says he tried to get an X-ray, but was declined.
Waking up every day, it's just you reliving that nightmare that your husband isn't there and he died alone, sick, and it could have been prevented.
Vono died at home. A new report found there are many more Canadians like him.
Shocking. It really tells the tale of the fact that we only understand what's at the tip of the iceberg.
The report suggests at least 2/3 of COVID-19 deaths outside of long-term care may have been missed. Using tools including excess deaths, cremation data, and antibody tests, researchers found between February and November of 2020, about 6,000 people 45 and older died with COVID-19 undetected. If deaths were missed at the same rate going forward, the researchers say the total pandemic death rate could be 2 times higher. Government statistics currently pegs it to more than 26,000.
Had we had this information in a more timely way, we may have been able to save many more lives.
One explanation, COVID symptoms can present atypically, especially in older people. The authors say reporting on deaths can fall short in many places in Canada.
We must have national reporting of deaths due to any cause within a week of them happening. We need this across the country.
Canada's chief public health officer acknowledged a gap.
Real-time mortality reporting alongside the other indicators are really quite critical to any future responses.
The report assumes many of these undetected deaths were among low-income earners, essential workers, or people from racialized communities, groups already disproportionately affected, perhaps affected even more. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
Up next, a Canadian billionaire chips in to help protect rare BC forests. British Columbia is known for its beauty, and for the right price, you can buy a piece of it. There are idyllic, uninhabited islands for sale not far from Vancouver. Protecting these pristine places requires big money. And now billionaire Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon, is stepping in to help. Robin Gill is on one of the islands tonight.
Saturnina Island in BC's picturesque Gulf Islands is only accessible by boat. No one lives here. At one point, it was going to be sold for $1.45 million to anyone wanting to build a home here.
There was multiple offers for much more than the asking price, and the vendor agreed to sell it to us for less than those offers because he was interested in seeing it protected.
BC Parks wanted that too, and to keep it for the public to enjoy. Enter a burly, benevolent billionaire, Lululemon founder Chip Wilson.
It's overwhelming. You can almost cry, like, where is this jewel been hiding and I've never seen it?
His $4 million donation will preserve Saturnina along with West Bolinas and a portion of Lasqueti, together known as the Salish Sea Islands, along with the extraordinary ecosystems of animals and plant life that call the islands home. Altogether, that money will save 365 acres. And to put it in perspective, it's about a third of Stanley Park in Vancouver. And this part of BC is home to the towering coastal Douglas firs. Decades of development have reduced the number of old-growth trees, and what's left is in danger.
If it's an ecologically sensitive piece of land, I would opt for nature always.
Even students from a local kayak team wanted to help. They did their own fundraiser, collecting $5,000.
We decided that we were going to cut wood for whatever reason. And, we weren't using saws. It was all axe work. Yeah, and we sold the wood, yes.
Wilson is watching for other land that can still be preserved.
100%.
It's a part of Canada relatively few people have seen. By bringing philanthropy, investment, and concern for the environment together, everyone here hopes to protect it so everyone can enjoy it. Robin Gill, Global News, Saturnina Island, BC.
That's Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Keeping it in BC, tonight's Your Canada is Campbell River. Beautiful shot. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.